Hi, good day, and welcome to Rico Anime Recaps. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Yor stands in a fighting position while holding on you ready to fight against Keith. Keith sends his German Shepherd after Yor, but she makes an intimidating face at the dog, which scares it and runs away. A commotion breaks out near the alleyway they're in, so Keith decides to try to run away. He tries to pull on Bond's leash, but Bond refuses to move, so Keith kicks Bond away and runs away from Yor. Yor is about to pursue him, but realizes she can't leave Onu behind. Yor asks Onu what happened, and Onu tells her that the men are terrorists who plan to use bomb dogs. Yor frantically searches Bond to see if he has a bomb, but doesn't see any, which relieves her. Yor says she's glad Onya is safe because she was worried for her. And Anya apologizes for leaving on her own. Yor decides to report this incident to the police, so she asks Onya for some information about the terrorists to give to them. While Yor is on the phone, Onya reads Bond's mind and sees Lloyd disappear from the first vision with Onya, and Yor depressed by this. She then sees another premonition where the clock tower rings, followed by an explosion in the city. In the aftermath, Anya is at the bomb's site and sees Lloyd dead and buried under rubble. A news broadcast announces that the terrorists succeeded in their assassination plot, with a war bound to happen. Onya is shocked by this and tries to think about what she should do. She thinks about telling Yor, but doesn't want to let her know about her and Bond's powers. Onya decides to run off with Bond in order to save Lloyd. She lies to Yor about needing to bring Lloyd toilet paper before rushing off. Yor quickly finishes her call and chases after Anya. A wise agent reports to Handler that they intercepted a report about a terrorist sighting in an alleyway near Central Station. Handler tells the agent to try and figure out the route the terrorists are taking, so they composition themselves along the way. She also warns the agent to be careful as they likely have explosives. Wise successfully intercepts a van with 4 terrorists inside and they detain them with 3 dogs in tow. They also found a case of explosives but couldn't find their leader, Keith, nearby. Keith peers around a corner to see his members captured and decides to carry out the plot himself. The wise agents attempt to interrogate the terrorists about Keith's location and the bomb locations, but they refuse to answer. Handler enters the room and asks what the students want. One of them tells her they want a war to put Austinia at the top and wipe Weasley's off the map. Handler responds by kicking him in the face. She criticizes the students for not knowing the brutalities of war and the sickening experiences that come with it. She points a gun at one of their heads and asks them if they learn anything about war at their university. Keith attaches a bomb to the dog with him and tells the dog to go after Minister Brantz. Keith believes now that his Plan B positions are compromised. The clock tower will be swarming with security. However, he decides to use this to his advantage so he can attack them. Handler sends out wise agents to each of the 4 potential locations they have for Keith, with Lloyd going to position B1, which is at the clock tower. Lloyd drives with 2 other agents to the clock tower to take him down. Meanwhile, Onya and Bond rush to the clock tower to get there before Lloyd and save his life. Onya, riding on Bond's back, rushes to the clock tower. After arriving, she tries to get Bond to show her the future again so she'll know when the explosion happens. However, Bond is too tired from running, so Anya tries to remember the positions of the clock hands, but realizes that she can't tell time. She decides to ask a man sitting on a bench when the clock tower bell will ring. He tells her it will ring in less than 30 minutes, so she decides they must hurry. Bond picks up the scent of Keith and drags Onya around a corner so they can hide. Keith's dog smells and sees the 2 of them, but doesn't alert Keith. He gets back in his car and thinks about how he hopes the bomb he planted works, which Onya hears with her telepathy. He then drives off before Onya rushes to where he planted the bomb. She reaches for the doorknob, but Bond barks at her to stop, reminding Onya that opening it would trigger the explosion. Onya decides to climb through a small window by the door and prepares to disarm the bomb. She realizes, however, that disarming it will not be as easy as in her cartoons as all the wires are the same color. She notices some ketchup on a table and decides to use it to leave a warning about the bomb for Lloyd. Onya and Bond leave the building before Lloyd and two otherwise agents arrive in a car. They climb up the stairs and find Onya's note. The older agent interprets the message as saying N.O., with an eggplant drawn below it rather than a bomb. He decides to ignore the message and reaches out to the doorknob to open the door. Onya anxiously waits outside, hoping that her warning worked. The time of the explosion arrives and Bond's premonition returns to a future with Lloyd alive and well back in the clock tower. Lloyd stops the older agent from opening the door, as he thinks the message on the door may be a warning. He uses a mirror to look through the small window by the door and sees the bomb hooked up to the door. They wonder who left the message, but decide to leave as the State Security Service has also learned of this hideout and is on their way, so they let them handle the bomb. They decide that with the SSS swarming around, they'll need to give up their search for Keith and just head right to where Minister Brands is informed by his secretary that he'll be expected at the reception hall shortly, and that there is a contingent from Australia's foreign ministry here to escort him. He complains about not being able to go anywhere in this country without being watched by the state. The secretary explains that they're probably just worried about the terrorists, to which Brantz complains how useless Wise is not having taken care of them already. Just as he says this, a member of Wise arrives in the room. Brantz leaves the building and is greeted by Yuri, who informs him that he and two other SSS agents will escort him to the conference. One of them opens a passenger door for him to get into the vehicle, but he instead gets into the driver's seat and drives off on his own. Watching from afar, Keith immediately gives chase. Meanwhile, the real Brantz is still inside the building with his secretary. Lloyd had come and taken his clothes as part of his disguise. Brantz complains to Hamler about Lloyd mugging him. Hamler explains that they needed his clothes so that the dog would pick up his scent back on the road. Lloyd makes a quick right turn, catching Keith by surprise as he's driving in circles. The two otherwise agents with Lloyd are in another vehicle providing information to Wise about Keith's vehicle. Lloyd keeps driving and starts heading towards the river, something Keith appreciates as it's away from the crowds. The Wise agents catch up with Keith, and the older agent pulls out a gun and starts shooting. However, Keith slams his car into theirs before throwing a stick hand grenade at them, flipping over the car. The older agent messages Lloyd over the radio that Keith still has explosives and is coming his way. Keith catches up to Lloyd's car and sees that he abandoned the vehicle. However, he sees Lloyd running off in the distance, so he sends his dog after him. Lloyd pulls out his gun to shoot at the dog, but the dog expertly dodges the shots. Lloyd decides to keep running and uses parkour to get on top of a building. Keith is shocked by this movement, believing Lloyd to be Brantz, who is 60 years old. The dog continues pursuing Lloyd and they end up in an alleyway where Lloyd pulls out his gun and takes off his disguise. He states that it's time to end this before firing a shot at the dog, and this brings the anime to an end.
Thanks for watching Rico Anime Recaps. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can get more videos like this.